Welcome. We are meeting under a total solar eclipse, April of 2023. For those of you who would like to take a look at your birth chart, we're meeting for our forthcoming Q&A this weekend, the 22nd. Chiron material also on sale in the video description below for those who'd like to learn specifically where and how you are picking up and carrying your own cross through life. We can use astrology to understand our healing journey. I am also putting together some magic and medicine with my friend and hypnotherapist, Maggie Kessler, to do with the themes we will talk about in this video. So if you're interested in receiving that magic and medicine, again, check out the link in the video description below. We talk about nature, specifically what is the dynamic we are receiving, living this life for our own soul's growth and evolution. So we do no sugarcoating. It is not about seeing this with a positive perspective, because dishonesty breeds betrayal, corruption, backstabbing. We need to understand the full spectrum of life, good, bad, and ugly. So we'll be discussing this eclipse in its specific nature, as well as how we can be maneuvering through these dynamics. We are talking in this video about themes that will persist through our forthcoming 6 months. Eclipse periods are intense portals of change and transformation. This tends to be some of the most noteworthy astrology of the year. People really notice these changes, relationship changes, living location changes. It's as if the lights go off, everything changes, the lights go back on, and we're in a completely different world and reality. There are 3 major components of this eclipse that describes the specific nature and dynamic, as well as some of the evolutionary mechanism we can be maneuvering. That is, namely, this eclipse is at the last degree of Aries, squaring Pluto, who is also square the moon's nodes. And finally, this eclipse is ruled by Mars, who is currently in Cancer and forming a first quarter square to Chiron. Indeed, this is not a stereotypical Aries season, Northern Hemisphere. This is our springtime, spring to life, back to life. But as we'll discuss, this particular springtime may be a little bit more complex. We may also be running some themes of core exhaustion. Indeed, running will certainly be a theme that's up, but running to, running away, going higher, getting down, from crisis to excitement to exhaustion. That's what we're talking about with this eclipse at the last degree of Aries. We're talking about a heightened level of excitement, passion, aggression, and daring. This is a let me at 'em type of eclipse. This is a taking a stand on our soapbox type of eclipse, as well as it can also be a punch in the gut and a wounded animal retreating under a rock. Now, the fact that this eclipse squares Pluto, who is at 0 degrees Aquarius, dials up this high intensity. We'll also talk about desire. When we're seeing an eclipse in Aries, the last degree, this is again a heightened level of desire, excitability. The prospects are huge. The future is exciting. This can also lead to the potential of getting ahead of ourselves, and we're going to talk about such an important underlying need for slowness. It's like we're excited to jump and dive into the future, while that future is incoming in a highly unpredictable stream of constant change. So there's a very specific dynamic with this Pluto square the nodes we'll talk about. It is a reverberation between the furnace of intensity, highly dramatic, close proximity, claustrophobic, melting down and molting the materials at hand. to reverberating into the need for high ground, safe space, slowness, peace, to be able to digest all of the intensity and change of the transformation that's taking place in and around us. So this is like a reverberation between ow, whoo, wow, glad that's over, ow, shoo, glad we got to high ground, ouch, thanks. This is kind of our prayer to the Scorpio goddess, Mother Kali, who really is jump-starting this old locomotive. There's old stuff spewing out, old, exhaust coming out of the tailpipe while we're jump-starting our soul. As this is indeed an eclipse of resurrection, but how we're resurrecting the soul is through this highly intense back and forth, through the past, which is unraveling, wringing out ancient ancestral baggage. This is to create space to breathe in these fresh, colorful, incoming streams of the future. So we're all really maneuvering a hot potato, and this might be some of the mantra that we want to be working with, is breathing in space, breathing in slowness, breathing in ease. We'll talk about radical self-empathy in a bit, breathing in our own warm, rinsing, pats on the back. You're going to make it through. You're doing a good job. Breathing out the disease, breathing out the panic, breathing out the desire to jump ahead or to grab onto that can be driven by anxiety. And when we're in that high anxiety, driven by instinctual stress space, that tends to be where the grabbiness or the intensity of our direction can crumble. So we have to be very, very careful. There is this learning to reach and hold without overly possessing to the point of destruction. How to let go by keeping this grip gentle enough to allow for this debris of what is no longer serving to be breathed out. But this is an intense process that is increasing in its pace, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, as the nodes form this tightening square to Pluto, now through July 2023. This is experienced as a light switch trigger to hell. There may be triggers reminding us of past pains. We'll talk about this punch in gut phenomenon. Betrayal, violence, deception, bullshit. It isn't our truth. It isn't who we are. It isn't what we really want. Yet it gets swept into our story. It gets swept into our experience. Other people project onto us. And then that triggers a light switch to hell. This is all it's going to be. The abandonment, the betrayal, the ickiness. It just feels how you feel right before you're going to puke, So there's this light switch to hell. We have to allow the awareness to go down into those realms, to really scrape the barrel out. This Mars square Chiron ruling this eclipse is like being a heavy rake going through the emotional muck of the past. We have to feel that. The discomfort, the inadequacy, the past stories that we have an allergic reaction now to, and we're getting rid of it. So we have to feel into what triggers those past experiences, because we're also clearing the path to no longer go into those triggers. How do we assert our needs, our desires? How do we create the support to really be able to be free, to be ourselves, to explore, and to do what we really want to? Now, we'll talk about that one too, because again, there's this desire nature that can be a little bit easier said than done. We're going to talk about Aries and the nature of desire and how oftentimes we want what we can't have. And as soon as we get what we want, do we even still want it anymore? And how sometimes we are shifting through our orientation through an exhaustion of I thought I wanted this thing and it's really not worth it. It's really scary, or it's intense, or it's too much. That's the material we're working with. And then we have to communicate those things. We have to feel those emotions in order to really support one another to forming these containers that feel safe. That's the orientation of Mars in Cancer. It's about creating safety. Mars likes to go fast. Eclipse last degree Aries is super excited. The prospects are high. It's like we were in prison and now we're moving to a palace where there is orgies and buffet every single day. This can give us a brain aneurysm, right? This can be too much at once. Mars trips over his own shoelaces, especially once we start to run into these hair sliver triggers that are bringing up these emotional fears, inadequacies, disappointments, and what also may be panic. Because if you're halfway one foot in prison, halfway one foot in the palace of pleasure, and you start to have the sense that I'm not sure I'm actually going to make it. I'm halfway stepping out, and I realize that my shoes are tied to the chair I'm sitting on. Uh-oh. And we're halfway standing up and we're halfway tripping over ourselves. And are we even going to make it to the thing that we've now set our eye upon? Again, the prospects are high. The more the desire, the increase of irritability. Where we experience more of that punch in the gut, there is an increase of deflation. One of the themes of this eclipse can be, I've had my eye on this target, I've wanted this thing, and everybody else put me down for it, shamed me for it. And now they're all doing that thing before I've even set my lips on it. I haven't even gotten to sample it. How is that fair? How is that okay? And this eclipse requires us. See, the reason why we experience these things is it's not a reward-punishment nature. That's why we can't take these silly new age, dishonest, just fluff everything and, just see everything as positive and pretend you're all fluff and pretend you're all positive, because then you miss the totality of life. It's not supposed to be all easy. It's not all supposed to be served on a silver platter for us right now. Because the actual evolutionary task of the time is being our own cheerleader. This getting knocked down off our horse is giving us the task of how can we put ourselves back on our horse. And again, that's some of the magic and medicine I'm working on with my friend Maggie, is this self-motivating capacity. How can we breathe back energy and motivation when we have this punch and gut experience that knocks the wind out of us? This is not a typical Aries season. Mars square Chiron. It's like we could be feeling like we want to go back into hibernation this springtime. It's an exhausting resurrection in many respects, because the light switch between heaven and hell is intense. This resurrecting the soul is intense. We have to be extra graceful on ourselves and others while we're going to be maneuvering these hair sliver triggers for a good reason, for a good purpose. We're draining out the old, we're clearing space for the new. So that's the light switch trigger to hell. It's like a lot of emotional material can be released with just a little reminder of the past or what we're no longer able to accept. Highly allergic reaction type of period. That's Mars square to Chiron. One of the really fun transits I was born under. I keep citing those. And this is why we need to make sure we're not putting down Cancer, which is all too common in spiritual New Age communities. It really disgusts me because, again, there's this parading as being the future while we're actually being the exact opposite of what we claim to be. So if we are representing the feminine, it's not complaining. We are expressing our emotional content, and we need a safe space to be heard. However, the shadow of Cancer is grippiness, grabbiness, desperation. I need you. I need you to lift me up. I need you to give me hugs. It's like a starvation that unfortunately pushes away the very thing we're trying to get to. So we have to be very, very aware of that. That's why the radical self-empathy, the radical self-motivation, it's like, if you're panicking and there isn't that flotation device to grab onto, the stereotypical person, partner, mom, dad, we got to be this for ourselves. So we go into the bath, reparent ourselves, give ourselves pats on the back. Look at all the good things you're doing, and you made a mistake. You're still doing the very best that you can, and you can communicate those things. And for those who actually see and appreciate, you will be heard. And even if it's not all being validated to you right now, what things can you breathe into your life to take it one step at a time, so that way we can prove to ourselves that it's not the worst case scenario that we're probably tail spinning into, because we've allowed the space and time to recenter. Okay, so we have to be self-reminding of our worth, our value. We have to be giving ourselves pats on the back for maneuvering our sensitivities, the highly specific patterns of woundedness we've already survived. Not everybody on the outside can see those things. We can create an inner container of self-security. It's okay. Pull over to the side of the road and get yourself a snack. Take a nap. It's all right. Not everybody sees the inner battle. Everybody's got an inner battle going on these days. So if we can relax ourselves enough, we no longer have that panic and that desperation that's actually pushing away the very thing we're trying to bring into our life. And then when we're calm, we're centered and anchored, we can speak to, well, I don't completely have this thing together. It's a work in progress, and it would be very useful if we could bring these parts and pieces together. And then we get there slowly, because it's slow and simple that wins the race. We've talked about this Chiron and Aries being the wounded masculine. The wounded masculine that's trying to grab onto and possess and demand and take and push through this arrogance. And this is a very desensitized way of being. Mars in Cancer is asking us to live with much more consideration for ourselves and others. What are we actually feeling? What is in between us and what we want to get? So we can create the roadway to that, have our eye on the prize, but not trip over our shoelaces and expose the fact that we're actually trying to skip and jump to the end before we get there. And then we're premature, and then we're inauthentic, and then we're leaking our garbage of ulterior motivation. And everyone looks at us and it's like, PU, you aren't who you actually proclaim to be whatsoever. All of this Aries brings up the dynamic of anger, reactivity, instincts. What does anger do? It's a repulsive emotion because it's a protective emotion. Anger is used healthily to push away that thing which we are allergic to. So, no problem with anger. Many of us are learning to be using healthy streams of anger under this eclipse. It's easier for some people than others. Some people are hyper-reactive. They're like puffer fish that are pushing everybody and everyone away all the time when they're actually hurt and simply needing to request help and support. So we need a balance here. We can't just be a doormat to every person on the planet and then never speaking for our needs. Some people have to actually get angry. Like, get the fuck off of me. Get the fuck away from me. Yes, anger's not bad. We need that sharpness of tone and pull out a little dagger and get away. We need healthy amounts of that, every single person. We're also learning how to be healthy warriors, protecting and defending the outspoken, the downtrodden. This is a warrior initiating eclipse. I've got my own Mars in a sign of Aries. It's like I've got a warrior. If we don't have a container to fight, that's going to come out in weird ways. I think some of y'all have seen that from me, followed me for many years. So it's like UFC champions need to fight. What is that guy going to become, an ice cream man? You think that's going to go well? No, we have to create containers to use that instinctually protective, defensive, aggressive, competitive vibe in a useful, constructive, beneficial type of way. This is where this eclipse with Jupiter and Aries, it's like, let's direct this energy to fight the right fights. No more of this pointing and blaming the leader for coughing the wrong way, and we declare war on them because other people are doing it and we're joining the bandwagon. Have we in our local communities talked one another about our own bullshit before we start declaring war on social media? And is that helping anybody? And is that protecting anybody? And are you actually saving anyone's life? Give me a break. There is so much misdirected anger, self-righteous crusadum out there. How can we use that reactivity, that energy, and that passion constructively to actually build something, move something, and do something in the world that's measurably beneficial? I think we can get there. Let's be aware again of where that puffer fish or that reactivity is just spinning out into self-sabotaging or self-defeating patterns. Trigger switch to hell, reactivity, trigger switch to heaven. How do we get to high ground? Is the completion of this North Node in Taurus. North Node completes its transit of Taurus in July. This particular eclipse is heralding the forthcoming years, 2024 into 2020, the start of 25. Taurus is about slowing down. Does it even really have to be that complex? Do we even really want that thing when we can just sit and be? And after going through the ringer of such intense, full spectrum, near-death experiences, getting sick and nearly dying, doesn't it feel amazing to just breathe? To just have your feet on the earth, to just sit and relax in the sun. This is mastering the Taurus-Scorpio polarity. Pluto square this polarity says we're reverberating back and forth to integrate the two together. So Scorpio is this Kalima, intense change. It's also this divine humor we can be learning, where it's like that tease, that punishment, that betrayal. We thought it was a worst case scenario, but it's actually connected to this divine weaving and stitching of healing. In order to heal and go so far up, we have to go down and scrape the barrel out. So there is this purging, this bleeding, this reliving, which is the furnace of evolution. Yeah, Scorpio in that discomfort is to go beyond our limitations. So it's not receiving this from the universe because we're failing or not praying right, or it's our past karma that's bad. This is evolutionary necessity. This is an evolutionary spur, move, change, get past the fear, right? How do we eliminate fear? To get to fearlessness, we face those fears. We go into the dark. We bring it up with a psychotherapist. We do the things that we've been trained in childhood to be most afraid of, even though it's what we want to do and it's healthy for us. But that's uncomfortable. Yeah, that's the fire walk. We need the Taurus polarity of the space, the time, the pasture, the garden to just do nothing but breathe, or put a snack in your mouth and just taste that blueberry and meditate with it under your tongue for minutes into hours until it's blueberry pie, blueberry rivers. Less is more. Slow and simple wins the race. How can we appreciate anything if it is wrapped with layer after layer of complexity and so much to do, such little time? We can't appreciate anything. So the Taurus polarity to the intensity and the drilling out is what allows for the transformation to land in our bodies. This is about Scorpio change and evolution to Taurus slowing down to integrate. And the mastery of the Scorpio-Taurus polarity is embodiment of the soul into form. These are like our past Egyptian, Babylonian lifetimes where there were tons of sexual and emotional betrayals and tragedies and traumas that we are remembering. So to move this energy of fear, crises, inadequacy, I'm not good enough, battling, this ulterior motivation of unconsciousness, being steered by things that we don't realize we're being steered by, being possessed by people and ulterior motivations. We thought it was one thing and it's actually quite different. Who we thought was our father, does he actually have our back, or is it another predator? How do we actually discern a predator from a safe space? It's like really intense, really messy, love, pain, and oftentimes the souls we go the deepest and to the most intimate levels. These are the realms which we go. This is the power of love. Leads us to the edges of fear to bring us back into trust and connection and supporting one another. It's not about us being completely on the same page. How can we each honor our own unique healing process? That's the resurrection of these Babylonian Egyptian lifetimes. Back then, we were masters of sexuality, the body, sensuality, somatic nature, using the body, the senses, death, and sexual nature to transform our reality. 6 months ago, end of October 2022, we had our prior solar eclipse joined with Venus on the South Node in Scorpio, bringing up this whole past 6 months of death and regeneration again and again and again to end these patterns in relationship, with earning money, with exchange of resources or energy that are no longer full of this abuse, this deception, this unhealthy way of relating that's driven by panic, unconsciousness, and ulterior motivation. Now this eclipse in Aries is heralding and spearheading the forthcoming transit of the moon's north node in Aries. We need the spark of what excites us in order to live. We all do need healthy sexuality in order to have the energy and libido in order to live. Does that mean we're all having sex? No, some people are naturally asexual. But we're all going to be exploring our natural sexuality in the years to come. Everyone's sexuality is unique and individual. Everyone's desire and value system is unique and individual because we have different desires and systems of value to explore different things. That's what makes us unique human beings. We have to carve out our own path through life with courage and confidence to discover those unique qualities, quirks, traits, to bring back and share with others. That's going to be our year of 2024 with the nodes in the Libra Aries polarity. So we have to have this healthy level of self-autonomy, the necessary freedom to explore and discover our own track through life. With this eclipse ruled by Mars square Chiron, we're creating the safety and the support to do that. Through this forthcoming 6 months, we are likely to experience a tremendous back and forth mechanism that's allowing us to clear out the old, eliminate those old fears while we are creating the space for the new to be brought in. Is it all happening overnight? Is it all happening all at once? Absolutely not. Again, eclipse at the last degree of Aries is high desire, high intensity. So the higher our desire, the higher the excitement, the increase of getting burned. That thing that we really wanted, that we almost but just barely didn't get, suddenly disappeared. That hurts. So we need to make sure that we're not burning down the house with our own panic whenever we have that punch in gut trigger. It's breathing in space to breathing out the rinsing out. It's a necessary calm in order to let that old shit go. Do we need the little triggers to bring that old shit up in order to puke it out ever so peacefully, gently, and with mutual support? That's absolutely what we have the opportunity to co-create. When we're talking about Mars square Chiron, we can also be talking about adrenal fatigue. This is not only going to bring up all of our physical issues, it's sexual issues, it's physical issues to do with the body, to do with our health. This is a time where we can be more so challenged. Collectively, health crises is to be expected under this eclipse, forthcoming summertime into fall. It's not punishment, it's not failure, this is evolution. Some things have to be moved out for a greater stream of what's working to be brought in. Some good herbs, speaking of the North Node in Taurus, for adrenal fatigue. Get yourself, just to be prepared, ginseng, rhodiola rosea, licorice root, and my favorite, tulsi, holy basil. Get yourself some purple-leaved Krishna tulsi, one of the best adaptogens, and that's exactly what we're learning to do, to adapt, to be flexible, to maneuver the high-intensity furnace. How can we create a container to harness that furnace? Where does the energy need to go? There's a lot of need for exploration, experimentation, and communication. What's going to allow us to maneuver these high intense realms without getting too grippy, too panicky, and accidentally pushing away what we want to be bringing in out of unconscious desperation? We need radical self-empathy. We need compassion, compassionate orientation towards self and other. We need to be very kind where our body is requesting slowness. We may have so many projects and so much excitement to get ahead. It's so important to be flexible to prevent the burnout, the breakdown, the panic, the fatigue, getting ahead of ourselves, or tripping over our own shoelaces. When or if that does happen, we take it into the bath. We give ourselves full credit. We're doing the best that we can. We will trip over our shoelaces anyways. Compassion towards one another means that we're listening and really catering towards understanding one another's healing journey. That gets a little bit tricky because we get crossed wires. I wanted to get to this thing today, and you're having a healing crisis at the same time. Well, you know what? I'm starving. I need to get that thing. You're getting in the way. So we're talking about a whole bunch of people with this desperation, this starving, who are maneuvering these, triggering one another to have necessary healing crises. So when we're dealing with so much Chiron, and again, I got Chiron in my store on sale so you can really understand and master this archetype. Where we are broken is where the light enters. As far as we go down, the higher we can go up. All of the real magicians, shamans are weaving these high intensity, lower than low, higher than high, so that way we can maneuver these realms of healing through and with others as well. So let's embrace the healing journey. Embracing Chiron means that we sometimes experience pain and discomfort, but if we actually allow ourselves to go in instead of sweeping it under the rug, that's where the opportunity for mending and healing and the whole game changes happens. In order to have that, we need safe space. The people in the environments that are not afraid to be honest, that are being transparent. We all have blind spots. We all have wounded parts that are a little less mature and cry out instinctually about what hurts, about what's not fair, about what's uncomfortable. And that's the opportunity to listen to one another. We need this radical listening to ourselves, so that way we're not overly desperate. We have to listen to ourselves enough to speak up for healthy boundaries. We can't be like a mother raising a dozen children that are just grabbing onto us every day. Sorry, come back another day. I'm no longer available. My energy is depleted. How did we get to that assessment? We felt uncomfortable. My energy is depleted. Are we complaining by voicing our emotional needs? We have largely grown up in society and households that trained us to be that way, to feel bad about speaking up for our sensitivities. Well, this particular Aries season is special, ladies and gentlemen, because we are all hypersensitive. We're all like Cancer crabs, pulling in, pulling out of our shell, accidentally stepping on one another's toes. We've got to wring that mop out. We've got to create this space to let it all go. We all need puke buckets. We do need to take turns holding each other's hair, holding each other's puke buckets, but it's got to be mutually reciprocal. We have to have that high ground to retreat, to pull ourselves out. It's like a surgeon putting on their mask and their gloves. Do we go into the really messy areas without having that type of protection? No. Do we need to go into those messy areas in order to perform this operation? Yes. So again, if this has resonated and you would like any assistance in this operation, it's a work in progress, but me and my friend hypnotherapist Maggie Kay, we're putting together some magic and medicine for you to maneuver the dynamics of which I've just explained. I'm going to explain and get into even more details with these dynamics, make it all even more personally pertainable to your chart in the download we will be creating for you as well. Again, we're meeting for our forthcoming Q&A on the 22nd. If you've got a question about this eclipse, if you're struggling, if you're going through intensity, you can bring a specific question in. We meet as a group. I provide a 5 to 10 minute mini reading to each individual while we look at our charts together as a whole. This is an opportunity to prove and test drive evolutionary astrology, as well as demonstrate the particular techniques that I am teaching and how effectively we can understand and validate one another in real time. The Q&A opportunity, we meet once a month, is included in my Astro School, where I am adding new lessons as I am teaching an ongoing course in evolutionary astrology. So if you would like to know how you can get the most of any interaction, any experience in time, any soul's life journey, you can know more information that would otherwise be impossible to access by learning evolutionary astrology. My teacher is Jeffrey Wolf Green. His teacher is the humanistic astrologer Dane Rudyard. All of the information to get trained and educated is out there and available. I also offer a free community meeting at rosalilacommunity.com. You can join us for our monthly think take, practice support circle, show and tell. We'll be meeting at the end of the month on the 29th. Friends, fans, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you the very best maneuvering this eclipse. Another portal shift, dimensional change, setting the tone for the 6 months to come. We'll be talking about a south nodal Scorpio lunar eclipse in our next video. In case I don't catch you until then, as always, take care.